you. Your pain isn't a prison, it's preparation for purpose. But when you're in it, it doesn't feel that way. It feels like punishment. It feels like you've been abandoned. You dropped in the middle of a battlefield without armor, direction, or backup. The nights are long, the silence is heavy, and the world keeps moving as if your heart didn't just shatter into unrecognizable pieces. You wake up and wonder why, and you go to sleep hoping tomorrow doesn't feel like today, But here's the truth buried under the ache. The very thing you think is breaking you is actually building you. That pain is not your sentence, it's your sharpening. Nobody grows in comfort. Nobody becomes a warrior through ease. You weren't meant to stay soft forever. Pain toughens your skin, not to make you bitter, but to make you battle ready. The betrayal, it taught you discernment. The rejection, it redirected you. The abandonment, it built your self-reliance. Every tear you've cried was watering something. Strength, clarity, resolve. What you thought was a delay was actually divine development. You weren't being punished, you were being prepared. Most people don't understand that growth doesn't feel good. They think purpose is handed out with applause and peace, but the truth is it's born in pressure. When your back is against the wall and you're forced to find a version of yourself you didn't know existed, that's when you begin to uncover what you were built for. It's in the struggle that you're stripped of the extra, of the illusions, of the need for validation, of the addiction to approval. Pain reveals the truth, who you are, who they are, and what's worth fighting for. You see, pain rewires your priorities. It teaches you to stop chasing shallow things and start seeking substance. When everything falls apart, you finally stop pretending. You start seeing clearly. The mask comes off, and that's when transformation begins, not when everything is going right, but when everything you thought you needed collapses. That collapse, that's not the end. That's the construction site of your future. What once made you weep now becomes your wisdom. What once made you question your worth becomes the birthplace of your confidence. You learn to stop negotiating your value. You stop begging to be understood. You stop explaining your heart to those committed to misunderstanding it. And in that pain, in that sacred fire, your mission is forged. Preparation through pain is often lonely, but it's not pointless. That the isolation makes space for you to meet yourself without the noise. You face your doubts, your disappointments in others, and you realize the only way out is through, not around, not above, through. And in going through, you discover you're stronger than you knew. You realize your capacity. You see that you can walk with wounds and still not waver. You can carry scars and still serve. Pain doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're becoming. It means there's a deeper depth you were meant to tap into. There's a version of you on the other side of the fire that couldn't have been shaped by success or applause. It required the storm. It required the struggle. It required being brought to your knees so you could rise with something unshakable inside you. Something no one can take. Not their betrayal, not their silence. Not their absence, because now your strength is no longer built on comfort or external support. It's built on the unbreakable truth that you survived what should have crushed you. Your pain trained you to fly solo when others abandoned you mid-flight. It taught you how to scan your environment and listen to your inner radar. You stopped asking for permission and started giving yourself the clearance to rise. And that rise isn't just for you. It's for every person watching who's still stuck in their own prison. Believing that their suffering is senseless. It's not. You're not. You're proof that what tried to bury you actually rooted you. That the darkness didn't destroy you. It taught you how to generate your own light. The past is a lesson, not a label. But too often, people wear their past like a name tag, as if every mistake, every failure, every betrayal is their permanent identity. They let what happened define who they are. They let what someone else did to them become the ceiling of what they believe they're allowed to become. That's not just self-sabotage, it's spiritual amnesia. Because the past is a chapter, not the whole book. It was a season, not the whole climate. And the sooner you stop carrying it like a badge, the sooner you start walking like someone who remembers they were built for more. Your past is real, but it's not your ruler. Yes, it happened. Yes, it hurt. Yes, it was unfair. But no, it doesn't get to dictate your worth. Pain may have been your teacher, but it's not your identity. You're not your trauma. You're not your darkest moment. You're not the version of yourself that had no tools, no clarity, and no direction. You're not who you were when you were trying to survive what you didn't yet understand. That person was fighting a war with limited weapons. and they made it through. But that's not who you are anymore. That was the beginning of your transformation, not the end of your growth. Labels are easy. A failure, broken, damaged, too late. People throw them around like they hold authority. But labels don't come from truth. They come from fear, shame, insecurity. And the opinions of people too lazy to understand your complexity, they reduce you to a moment when you were still learning. But the truth is you are evolving every day, every decision. Every time you choose to heal instead of hide, learn instead of lash out, move forward instead of spiral backward, you're rejecting the label and embracing the lesson. Lessons are liberating. They don't chain you to who you were. They educate you for who you're becoming. The lesson teaches you boundaries. It gives you discernment. It sharpens your focus. It humbles your ego. It reminds you what you will no longer accept. It shows you the patterns that keep repeating. And if you're paying attention, it unlocks a new level of strength you never had access to before. Not because life got easier, but because your mindset got stronger. But you have to make a choice. Will you keep rehearsing the wound, or will you extract the wisdom? Will you keep asking why it happened? Or will you start asking what it taught you? When you choose the lesson, you stop being a victim of your history and become a student of your evolution. You stop blaming the storm and start learning how to build in the rain. You stop letting shame write your story, start using truth as your pen. People will try to remind you of your past because they're intimidated by your potential. They'll say, but you used to be, as if the old you is the only version that's allowed to exist. That's their limitation, not yours. Growth threatens people who've stayed stagnant. Change unsettles those who need you to stay the same so they can feel superior. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them misunderstand you. You are not responsible for making others feel at ease with your healing. Your job is not to dim your transformation to match their memory of you. The past may have introduced you to rock bottom, but it also introduced you to resilience. It may have shattered your innocence, but it awakened your discernment. You learned who to trust. You learned who you are. You learned how to walk without crutches. You discovered how strong you could be when being strong was your only option. And all of that wisdom, that grit, that insight, that unshakable knowing, it came from the lesson, not the label. The label keeps you stuck. The lesson sets you free. You've been through enough to understand that healing isn't about pretending the past didn't happen. It's about refusing to let it chain you to a version of yourself that no longer serves your destiny. It's about stepping into rooms your old self would never believe you belonged in and walking like you were born to be there. Not because you're perfect, but because you're progressing. Not because you're flawless, but because you're faithful to the work. And that work is what transforms the pain into purpose, the mistake into momentum. The wound into wisdom. Trauma doesn't define you unless you surrender to it. That doesn't mean what happened to you wasn't real. That doesn't mean it didn't cut deep, shake your identity, or fracture the way you see the world. It means that what happened isn't the final chapter unless you stop turning the pages. Trauma is an experience, not a definition. It's a moment in your timeline, not the sum total of who you are. It marked you, yes, but it didn't make you. What makes you is how you respond, how you rebuild, how you choose not to let the darkness write your narrative in permanent ink. There's a moment, sometimes quiet, sometimes violent, when trauma enters your life and shifts everything. You start doubting your instincts. You lose your sense of safety. You question your worth. You begin to move through life with armor instead of trust, silence instead of voice. It can feel like the world is split into two halves, the person you were before and the person you became after. And that's where the danger lies, not in the trauma itself, but in the false story that begins to grow around it. The story that says you'll never be whole again. The story that says you're ruined, unworthy, too damaged to dream, too broken to be loved. Too fragile to rise. That story is the true enemy, not the trauma. Surrendering to trauma doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like perfectionism, people-pleasing, chronic self-doubt, over-apologizing. It looks like tolerating toxic relationships because deep down, you believe that's all you're worthy of. It looks like refusing to try again because failure once felt like death. It looks like staying in survival mode long after the threat has passed because safety feels foreign and struggle feels familiar. But you weren't created to live in survival forever. You weren't born just to breathe through pain and call it life. There's more for you than just getting through the day. There's a version of you that exists beyond the trauma, but you won't meet that version if you keep surrendering to the past as if it's your final destination. You don't owe your trauma your loyalty. You don't owe it your identity. You don't have to keep replaying what happened to feel valid. Your suffering is not your badge of belonging. It was a valley, not a verdict. And healing doesn't mean it didn't happen. Healing means it no longer holds the pen. It means you take your power back one decision at a time. Sometimes that looks like setting boundaries that make people uncomfortable. Sometimes it's walking away from relationships that were rooted in codependency, not connection. Sometimes it means sitting in the pain long enough to hear what it's trying to teach you instead of running from it. Choosing not to surrender to trauma doesn't mean pretending you're fine. It means refusing to become what hurt you. It means you show up with the wound, but choose not to let it shape your entire identity. It means you stop using your pain as an excuse and start using it as evidence of your survival. Yes, you still have days where the weight feels unbearable. But even on those days, you get to choose whether that weight becomes a wall or a foundation, whether it becomes something that blocks you or something that builds you. Trauma may have interrupted your story, but it doesn't get to narrate the rest. Every time you speak up when you used to stay silent, you're rewriting the script. Every time you take a risk when fear tells you to shut down, you're reclaiming the pen. Every time you offer yourself compassion instead of criticism, you're stepping out of the identity trauma tried to place on you. And it's a fight, make no mistake. Not a loud, visible one, but a daily internal battle between the version of you that trauma built and the version of you that freedom is calling for. There's power in knowing that the hardest thing you've been through doesn't have to be the loudest part of your story. There's strength in realizing that your identity isn't what happened to you, it's who you choose to become despite it. Surrendering is easy. Fighting for yourself is harder. But freedom doesn't come from what you've been through. It comes from who you decide to be on the other side of it. Real healing begins when you stop rehearsing the wound. As long as you keep replaying what happened, every betrayal, every word, every moment where you felt helpless, you stay tethered to it. The mind doesn't know the difference between what's happening and what's remembered with intensity. So when you relive the pain, your body does too. Your heart races the same way. Your stomach knots the same way. Your trust fractures again. The brain loops it like a broken record, and with each repetition, the wound stays raw. What you think is processing is actually prolonging you. What you call reflection becomes rumination, and in that space, healing can't breathe. You weren't designed to carry the same wound every day as proof of your strength. You were meant to scar, not stay open. Scars are signs that you've survived, signs that your body closed what once almost killed you. But emotional wounds don't close when you keep reopening them with every memory. You go back to the argument, you go back to the silence, you go back to the empty room or the slammed door or the message that never came. And while it's human to hurt you, it's dangerous to live in that moment like it's your present reality. Healing doesn't erase the past, but it does change your relationship to it. And that shift can't happen if the wound is always center stage. Some people wear their pain like identity. It becomes their introduction, their reason for stagnation, their comfort zone. Because as long as the wound is active, they don't have to risk growth. Growth means vulnerability. Growth means stepping into unknown territory without the familiar pain to lean on. And pain, though heavy, can feel safe when it's all you've known. But safety isn't the same as healing. Real healing is disruptive. It asks you to stop seeking justice from people who will never be sorry. It asks you to stop hoping for a different past. It requires you to release the version of yourself that was addicted to being hurt, because that version knew how to survive, but not how to thrive. And thriving doesn't come from constant reflection. It comes from redirection. It comes from giving your energy to the present you, to the version you who has already endured enough and is ready to live without bleeding in every conversation. Rehearsing the wound is a cycle of control. We go back to what happened because we think just maybe, if we understand it better, we'll feel less broken. But there's no perfect explanation that undoes betrayal. There's no replay detailed enough that heals abandonment. Closure doesn't come from analyzing the damage. It comes from choosing to walk anyway. Choosing to carry the lesson, not the pain. Choosing to feel it, acknowledge it, and then move forward without dragging the wound like a suitcase into every future relationship, decision, and dream. Healing happens when you choose to rewrite the narrative. When you stop saying, this happened to me, so I can't, and start saying, this happened to me, you, and I still can. It's when you start identifying more with the strength it took to survive than with the suffering itself. When you stop rehearsing how they hurt you and start practicing how you'll rise. It's when you speak from the scar, not from the open cut. When you let the memory visit, but no longer let it lie rent-free in your soul. Your story is valid. Your pain was real. But you deserve more than being stuck in an emotional time loop. You deserve peace that doesn't require replay. You deserve moments where your smile isn't interrupted by echoes of the past. You deserve love that doesn't feel like a risk. And the only way to make space for that is to stop feeding what wounded you, to stop giving your energy to a chapter that already taught you what it needed to stop letting the pain rehearse itself in your mind like a daily script when you're meant to be writing a new scene. Healing begins when you realize you are not what happened. You are what you do with what happened. And nothing powerful is born from staying in the injury. Power comes from the decision to leave the familiar rhythm of pain and create a new one rooted in peace, growth, and radical release of the story that kept you small. A true ally challenges you. A demon coddles your dysfunction. Not everyone who smiles in your face is there to support your growth. Some people show up in your life not to elevate you, but to keep you exactly where you are, stuck, stagnant and safe by their standards. They applaud your mediocrity, not because they want your peace, but because your comfort makes them feel less threatened. A true ally will love you enough to risk offending you. They won't let your excuses slide. They won't stay silent while you self-destruct behind a pretty mask. They see past your performance, your defense mechanisms, your cleverly crafted stories, and they hold up a mirror whether you're ready or not. Growth is uncomfortable. Transformation requires truth, and truth, real truth, often stings before it saves. That's why most people avoid it. That's why demons dress their enabling in false empathy. They'll call your avoidance rest. They'll label your patterns personality. They'll tell you that boundaries are too harsh and accountability is toxic. They'll frame correction as cruelty and challenge as betrayal. And if you're not careful, you'll start believing that anyone who makes you feel discomfort must be against you, when in fact, the ones who let you remain stuck are the ones slowly choking your potential under the guise of love. A true ally will confront you when your habits are harming you. They will ask you the uncomfortable questions. They will speak when silence is easier. They will call out the contradictions between your words and your actions, not because they want control but because they see your calling, not because they're perfect, but because they're willing to stand in the fire with you instead of watching you burn quietly from a distance. They don't feed your dysfunction to keep you docile. They challenge it because they know who you are beneath it. Demons, however, thrive in your dysfunction. They celebrate your smallness. They reinforce your fears. They mirror your wounds instead of reflecting your worth. They don't want you to wake up because an awakened version of you won't need their approval. An awakened version of you will stop settling, stop explaining, stop sacrificing your peace just to maintain false harmony. And that threatens the dynamic they've grown comfortable with. They need you asleep to their manipulation. They need you too tired to question their loyalty. They need you so tangled in self-doubt that their validation feels like a lifeline. But validation isn't always love, and comfort isn't always care. Some people keep you broken because your healing would expose their role in your pain. Some people support the version of you that serves their agenda, the agreeable version, the quiet version, the unhealed version that can be controlled. And when you begin to evolve, when you start requiring depth instead of drama, integrity instead of attention, clarity instead of chaos, they withdraw their affection, not because you're wrong, but because you're no longer easy to manipulate. It takes courage to recognize that love and loyalty are not the same. That some people will stand beside you in dysfunction, but disappear the moment you pursue discipline. That not everyone who stays is a friend, and not everyone who challenges you is an enemy. Real love requires confrontation. Real friendship includes friction. A true ally will disappoint your comfort in order to protect your calling. They will say no when you want yes. They will hold you accountable when you want permission. They will remind you of your standards when you're tempted to forget. You don't need more people who let you spiral just to avoid conflict. You need people who will look you in the eyes when your decisions don't align with your destiny and say, this isn't you. You need the kind of connection that disrupts dysfunction, you, not accommodates it. The kind of love that sees you falling and refuses to let you hit the ground without a fight. Because that's what real alliance looks like, not coddling, but challenging you. Not passive agreement, but active elevation. Not silence in your downfall, but truth in your rise. A true ally will make you uncomfortable to help you grow. A demon will keep you comfortable so you never outgrow the version of yourself they can control. One will speak life into your becoming. The other will talk you into staying small. And your future depends on knowing the difference